Dr. William Booth, an historian specialising in Latin America and communism at the University of Oxford. Thanks very much for joining us. How much military support do you think Juan Guaido might have? Hello, Dr. Booth, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Forgive me. I was asking how much military support you think he might have.
I think the answer is probably not enough by the look of it, at least not enough for the time to be now, as he claims it is.
He took trouble, as I said in his video, to be seen with military figures, but as you know, he also appealed for the military to come onto his side. Why do you think he doesn't have the support he might want?
Well, he's got some prominent figures from the security services, from the National Guard, and there are videos going around of certain parts of the National Guard not stopping protesters in the streets. But equally, there are plenty of other videos going around of National Guard preventing protesters from moving along. And clearly, when they went to La Carlota Air Base this morning, they hoped that they would take the airbase and that there would be a military uprising, and that hasn't happened. They only took the overpass on the motorway. And they've had to move away to a park. So there hasn't been a large-scale military uprising yet.
Is that because the government has been successful at keeping the military on side?
Well, thus far, yes. And, we're hearing a lot of the same things today that we heard back in January, that there would be a large-scale uprising and so on. But, clearly there are people defecting. There have been plenty of military people who have gone over into Colombia. Other people have joined the protesters today, but it doesn't seem to be anything like the kind of mass-scale uprising that they would need. And in fact, you've got people within the opposition calling for US intervention to help. And actually, I think that's only going to help the Venezuelan government to retain power.
Why do you say that?
Well, that's one of their main strengths, is to being able to portray this as an external coup. And in fact, now that the opposition leaders are directly calling for a military uprising, it's a bit difficult for them to say that it's not a military coup.
Have they blown it?
We don't know yet. I mean, we've had so many moments like this in Venezuela over the last few years where people have said, this is the time, this is the end game, winner takes all, and it just isn't. This neither the government nor the opposition at the moment has a significant majority that can embed it in power for the next few years. There are plenty of Venezuelans who are far more focused on their day-to-day struggles than they are on what's being portrayed outside the country as a sort of binary Manichaean struggle.
And those struggles for many Venezuelans are profound, and they've been long-lasting.
Well, they are. I mean, it certainly dates back to sort of 2013 and the fall in oil prices. But we shouldn't, the thing that is often put about is that, Venezuela was this, halcyon, wealthy paradise prior to Chavez, which is also nonsense. Venezuela's got a long history of problems, of inequality, of oil dependency. None of that is new. And I don't think this is going to go away if there's a quick change in government now. Guaido is seen very much as backed by the US. He's not going to have the kind of popular legitimacy that he probably needs. And he's so associated with Leopoldo Lopez, this other leader that was busted out of house arrest this morning, who himself is associated with a rather discredited part of the opposition.
But the very fact that he was standing next to Leopoldo Lopez on today of all days was seen certainly this morning as being pretty significant. First of all, the fact that Leopoldo Lopez was out. Tell us more about his background.
Well, he's been under house arrest. He's been a prominent figure in the opposition. He set up this party, which was a splinter from another opposition party. And he's been seen as the sort of eminence grise behind the rise of Guaido. He made sure that Guaido was in his constitutional position that he was when he was able in January to make claims for the presidency. Claims that have been accepted by many international governments, but only around a quarter of countries actually. That's another thing that we must bear in mind. This is not something that's completely accepted, albeit he has very strong US backing. And Pompeo's come out very strongly again to say that they support what's going on.
And China and Russia among the countries with severe doubts about the uprising.
Oh, absolutely. Russia's fully behind the Maduro government, and in fact, Pompeo antagonized China a couple of weeks ago by claiming that what's gone wrong in Venezuela is China's fault. And that I think Trump had been trying to drive a bit of a wedge between Russia and China over Venezuela, and they've really done that in a very ham-fisted way. And I suspect China are not going to go anywhere.
It's hard to predict what will happen next, but on the basis of everything you know, what's your best guess?
Well, you can have knowledge without predictions, or predictions without knowledge, can't you? I'm, I, I don't think they've got enough of a, they've not got to a tipping point yet. There are plenty of protesters out on the street for sure. Lots of them are out in parts of Caracas that are wealthier, that are more peripheral. You see in lots of the regional towns there are large scale protests where the National Guard are not opposing the protesters. But fundamentally, there is not a serious challenge to the government going on in the key parts of Caracas where it matters at the moment, and the military have not flipped. So I think a dramatic change is probably not likely to happen. If Guaido gets arrested, and there are plenty of people, knowledgeable people, Alejandro Velasco put this on Twitter earlier today, whether this is a serious military coup attempt or in fact Guaido is trying to get arrested in order to force the US's hand, now that would change the equation pretty significantly.
Would the US get involved militarily?
I wouldn't like to predict on that either necessarily, but when you have somebody like John Bolton that high up in the administration, when you have somebody like Elliot Abrams closely involved with what's going on in Venezuela, then I think all bets are off.
Thank you very much, Dr. William Booth.